Hello, everyone. Here we are on our live question and answer session with Jami, and how we're just going to have a little kind of wrap up from the podcast that she did now over a week ago. So this is, a little bit late because I just messed up last Tuesday. I just tried to do too much in one day, and poor Jami got the brunt of it.
It's okay. Believe me.
Turns out
It's
Jami's had a rough week too, so this is just us kind of
a rough
having
year.
some yeah. So now that we're wrapping up the week and we're going to try to take good care of ourselves, and that's part of what we're talking about today, right? We're talking about self-care, and if you have questions for Jami, please type them in anytime throughout. So we're just going to do a little chat as to kind of what the last 10 days or so have been like. But if you have any questions, type away, and so then we can ask her. Those would be questions about just Judson and addiction and dealing with that whole messiness of addiction, or about grief, or about self-care after grief. Any of those topics I think would be good.
Yeah. I had
So,
actually quite a few people reach out to me through Messenger after the podcast and after my blog went out. It's so over 200 people actually, and a lot of people just sharing their love and their compassion, but numerous people who have gone through this also, and we're also very ashamed to talk about it. So
uh-huh.
it's, even if they can't come on today, because a lot of them said, I can't, they're still not ready,
Yeah.
but they're getting a lot from the information. So that's all I want, is to be able to help people to hopefully not go through what I've gone through.
Well, that is just astounding to me that many people reached out. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I remember you asking me at the beginning when it came out. You said, "Do less people listen to the episodes that talk about death by suicide or addiction?" And I
mhm.
said, "Nope." And
I
you know
was
what? Nope. Absolutely
okay, good.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You had a wonderful amount of of listens, just
Good.
very typical to kind of normal. So
Yeah.
just know that even though it might feel like people don't want to talk about it, and they may not want to talk about it, but a lot of times they still want to listen.
Mhm.
And there's a
Agreed.
difference whether you're willing to listen kind of quietly yourself, or
Mhm.
put yourself out there and be more open about it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, addiction of any kind, but then because there's meth involved, it's sort of the evil stepchild of all the drugs, and is the one that is least talked about. And as a matter of fact, I've been invited to go on to 2 other podcasts since they heard yours.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes, and one is specifically about meth, and then the other is another just addiction and mental health awareness podcast. So those will be coming out in a couple weeks. We haven't recorded yet. I haven't been able to do it yet. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
And when I
Okay.
listen to myself on the podcast I did with you, I just see how scrambled I am right now. So forgive me, everybody.
I think you're doing great. I really do.
Thank you.
Oh,
It's been
I
hard.
really do. I really do. And you have been really inspiring to me in many ways. I know
Mm,
you don't feel that way, but you really did. I had that conversation with you and I thought, I need to start taking better care of myself. I need to do better. I feel like, you inspired me to
Thank you.
try to work harder on me. So I appreciate that a lot.
Well, you're welcome. And I have fallen into the abyss with everyone else and have not been doing the best job of taking care of me since Judson died. I see how much I just took it for granted before. Like I said, I was always Mach 2 with my hair on fire, kind of running away from everything instead of you. I never learned. It was never ever modeled for me in my childhood that we would go inside for the answers. It seems
Mhm.
like we've been kind of conditioned to go outside for the answers. And that was the world I grew up in. I don't know about everyone else, but it was always about how you look and what you do and all of that. And I feel like that pressure on everyone. And now with social media, people
Mhm.
feel like they have to be perfect. And this is just kind of adding to this, it's adding fuel to the fire, depression and anxiety and addiction. And just never
For
feeling like you're
sure.
good enough, right? And
Well, and I think you're 100% right, and that social media is terrible with that,
yeah,
really. I think
it's
about the kids that I
mhm,
see and with Instagram and TikTok and all these kinds of things. You don't put stuff on the regular stuff.
right.
They put things on when it's happy and when they look perfect and when all this is, and so it's giving such a false impression to other kids that that's what their life is just like. So
Mhm,
mine is horrible because they don't, you don't go on and video yourself when you're rolling out of bed and feeling like garbage and
mhm,
whatever. That's never what's on there. What's on there is not real. And I tell
right.
kids all the time, that's not real life. None of
Mhm,
it's real. And
exactly.
I don't think they believe me, but but it's not real.
I really feel for parents of young kids right now. My grandkids are 12 and 15, and it's so different now with social media and kids learning to problem solve on
Yeah.
social media by well, we won't go there, but yeah, it's really sad. And a lot of the young moms that I talked to in the last 10 years would tell me it's a lot like the Bad Moms movie where, there's kind of this little clique that is just constantly judging you and making you feel bad and standing right there, to let you know all the places where you're wrong. And it's not good for the parents either, right?
Mhm.
It's a
No,
mess.
no, no.
Mm.
So we do have a few people watching. Again, if anybody has any questions, that would be great to go ahead and just type those in right now. If not, um, we can go on and talk about something that we touched on when we were recording the podcast, and that was about self-care and about how when I see a patient, I always tell them that we need to look at things because they always come to me just for a prescription because they think I'll just write them a prescription and somehow things will be better. I mean, I don't know if they really think that, but I think they hope that. They hope that just a prescription will make things better. And we talk about how, nope, it's like 5 things. 5. Put
Mhm.
my hand in my front of my face that I can give them a prescription, but we're 20% of the way there. And then they really need to go see their counselor because that's another 20%. And they need to make sure they're getting good sleep,
Mhm.
and that's good sleep, real sleep. You can take sleeping pills. They've got I remember I took some sleeping pills even after Andy died because I could not sleep, and so I took these sleeping pills, and then I started reading about some studies that they've done, and when they do PET scans looking at brain activity when people are sleeping versus when people are sleeping on one of these
Yep.
prescription sleep meds, it's not even close to the same. It's not
Mm-mm.
sleep. So they're not even
The
sleeping. So when
Yeah,
I
the
was on those
restorative.
meds, I wasn't even sleeping. I thought I was sleeping and I wasn't, exactly awake, but it was closer to being under anesthesia than actual sleeping. So it's not restorative in the same type of way. So that is really focusing on trying to get good sleep, not
Mhm.
prescription induced sleep, but actual sleep. And I know
Exactly.
we touched on that too with Judson because that
Mhm.
was a mistake, certainly, that was made with Judson, is giving him sleeping pills to
Mhm.
sleep. And that's not restorative sleep.
No, and this I mean, my whole purpose for doing this is to shine a light on this dark topic because Judson this started for Judson at he was 24 years old. It started with depression and insomnia, and it
Right.
ended with, I got the report back from the coroner, of course, right at Christmas, and I mean, anyway, he had 9 prescriptions, and all of them were to help with mood and all of that. So this ended with multiple prescriptions,
Mhm.
more depression, more anxiety, and some psychosis because of the Adderall addiction and of course the meth, and then it ended with suicide. And he was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder, about a year before he died. And I remember him being so excited to get that diagnosis because he said, now I can like make sense of all of
Yeah.
this. And I was like, you were never bipolar. You were never bipolar. you were
Yeah.
on Adderall for 10 years. And one of the things, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about one of the moms who reached out to me
Sure.
really quickly, because she wrote one of the most beautiful, poignant, and long responses to me, and told me about her son, who was 8 years old, and her doctor prescribed Adderall, and he was on it for 6 months. And she said he completely changed. He was always crying. He was never the same. He would sit in the corner. And when she explained this to her doctor, her doctor actually got mad at her and said that if I prescribed a diabetic medication, you wouldn't be questioning me. So it was more about his, I don't know if I should say ego or not. I'm obviously an angry, grieving mom, but she said she had got in an argument with the doctor about taking him off of Adderall because
Hmm.
of his behavior changes, and he was more mad at her for not trusting him to take the Adderall.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
that's just a shame. I mean, certainly I have kids that with bad ADHD who cannot function in school, cannot make friendships, cannot do anything,
wow.
that do incredibly well when we give them a medication like Adderall or Concerta or something like that. It can be very life-changing for kids that you see, they're just so all over the place. They are failing in school. Nobody wants to be their friend because they're all weird and they're picking on them and they're jumping
Mm,
all over the place. So, I mean, I don't want to make that all evil at all, but I do have to say, as a doctor, when I have somebody say, my kid's not the same, they're not acting right. It's not this, oh my word, life is easier now. If it's my personality's changed and things are awful, you have to
mhm,
listen. I mean, you have to listen to that parent. And
mhm,
it's not that everyone should be on these medications. It's that sometimes it can be really beneficial, but certainly not always. And certainly, and I feel like in Judson's case, it was done unbelievably poorly. This is not a kid like that. I mean, what I was
mhm.
explaining, it was not Judson.
No, he was never ever ADHD ever,
Yeah, right.
and he didn't get a prescription to Adderall until he was 24 years old. And as a
Right.
firefighter, it was given to him so he could wake up quickly
Yeah, right.
when a fire bell goes off, because he had to take the Ambien to put him to sleep, and all the other cocktail of prescriptions that he was on for over 10 years, and I it's I just keep hearing the same story over and over and over. And I guess, just to digress a second, you had mentioned the 5 things, and
Oh, right. And I never
I'm
got onto the last two. We never got to the last two.
well,
Yeah.
and so go
We're
ahead
going
and
to go
finish. But I was
back. Yes.
just going to say, I think when you're dealing with kids that age and you're prescribing Adderall to try to see if it will work for them, I'm assuming that you're also telling the parents how to help bring that
Of
holistic 5,
course, of
right?
course, of course. And of course, it is also that we're hoping that with time and some maturity, you can start to understand your own brain better and how it
Mhm,
works and not have to rely on medications to do that
mhm.
anymore. Right? I mean,
Exactly.
not at all. Like, I feel like I've got some ADHD. I'm not on medications because I know what I need to do. Do I
Mhm,
need to have a million reminders to do everything? Of course I do, but I know that about myself. And so I remember hearing from one kid a long time ago. He had been on medication. He was in high school and he was off his medications now, and his little brother was going to go on. And his mom said that he looked at his little brother and he said, I really think you should try this. It really helped me. I don't need it anymore, but it really
mm,
helped me, and I was struggling.
mm,
So, I think there's a time and a place, but then once you get older, sometimes and sometimes not. I mean, sometimes people continue, but a lot of times you don't need to stay on forever. And it
mhm,
can help you when you're maturity and you can't make those decisions and do those reminders yourself and do all of those things.
mhm,
I had a girl just this week that we decided to take off her medication, and I said, "Okay, now I want you to tell me what you're going to do now, because we were relying on medications to help you with some of these things. So what are you going to do instead?" And she gave me this blank look, and I said, "Honey, no, I can't get a blank look from you. We have to make a plan as to what you're going to do
Mhm.
now instead,
Mhm.
because we've been relying on something and now you won't have that. And I think that's a great decision and I'm all for it, but we need to know what you can do, and how you'll remind yourself and how you'll do those type of things.
It's a
So,
great yeah, that's great. I think a really holistic plan moving forward that where the patient becomes their own health advocate, along with
mhm,
their doctor and that communication and trying things because we are all so different. What works for one person does not work for another person,
mhm,
and
mhm.
exercise and being outside in nature and as
And
it
just
turns out
knowing that it's not a quick fix. It's
mm-mm,
not. And
mm-mm,
if it can be a tool until you can kind of help yourself in other ways, beautiful. I mean,
yeah.
that's what I prefer, right?
And
That's what I prefer.
there
Mhm.
is Gabor Mate, who is a Canadian doctor who has really just he's doing some incredible research about addiction and ADHD in children. And he says his approach also is before prescribing all these medications is, so what's going on at home? Like,
Yeah.
are your kids exercising? Are they eating junk food? Are they eating healthy?
Yeah,
Or
because
is there
those
a
were the
lot of
last 2 that we didn't talk about
okay,
is exercise and keeping your body moving, and then what you're eating, putting good fuel in your body, that it's not just
exactly,
junk. Mhm,
exactly, and we all
mhm.
know, the easy, convenient foods out there that are void of nutrients
Oh,
and
yes.
fiber and
Yes,
all
for
the things you
sure.
need, and they're highly addictive. They're highly palatable for a reason so that you'll buy more and you'll buy the sweet drink that goes with the salty crunchy, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
I'm guilty of it too. I mean, there's a lot of times where it's just easier, right?
Oh, for sure,
We've
for sure.
gotten away from nature and taking care of ourselves the way we should. It's actually not hard. It's just easier to do the
Yeah.
convenience thing, but yeah, and that's what, he also Gabor Mate also said, "What so what's going on at home? All of those things, and then on top of that, are you stressing? Are you and your husband, are you and your partner, are you bickering in front of the kids? Are you handing them a device instead of sitting down and actually talking to them?"
Mhm.
And so there's all these things he says, let's start there,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
for sure, for
And
sure.
get to the core of what's going on because we all know that addiction starts
Oh,
some hole in the soul or unmet need or stressor or traumatic event that needs some attention. It needs some a combination of therapy and then all of those other things you mentioned to try to find what the core problem is so that then you can fix it instead
yeah,
of
or work on
avoid
it,
it.
right? I mean,
Yes,
and that's that and sometimes I don't love the word fix too, is that you can work on it. I mean, we're
there
all
you
just
go.
work in progress,
I
and
agree.
we are not gonna be able to make things perfect necessarily, but to improve can be great.
Mhm.
So you brought up an email that you got, and I want to bring up one that I got that now deals more with the topic of suicide. And I asked this writer if I could share this on this session, and she was happy to have me share it. So I'm going to just read kind of a little section.
Okay.
So I found some comfort in support groups that deal specifically with suicide because many consider it in a different category, although it shouldn't be, from other child loss. I use the word child because even though her daughter was an adult, she will always be her child. She was the youngest of her 2 beautiful daughters.
Mhm.
Um, so some feel there's a distinction between those who choose death by suicide and those who didn't choose death, like accidents or illness. But I'm convinced that those who choose suicide are usually suffering from a terrible disease. They are in unbearable pain, and their choices are not really choices at all. And that was my favorite sentence. Their choices were not really choices at all. And that's right.
That's what I
Judson did
said.
not
Mhm.
make that choice because in his mind, it wasn't a choice. And so
His
I
mind
just thought that
yeah,
was
yeah,
beautiful
mhm,
that she wrote that. And I
mhm.
just wanted to share that with all of
Thank
you because
you.
that just hit me really hard.
His
Mhm.
mind wasn't even working.
No,
He
no,
was in
there was
fight
no way for
or
him to
flight.
make a choice.
Yeah, he was in survival mode, and survival for someone that far down the addiction road is stopping the pain.
Yeah.
And there's, in their mind, there's only one or two ways to do that. And and people that commit suicide many times think that the world's going to be better, that we will be better without them there, and it's so not true. It's so
Wow.
not true.
Very clearly. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
all of these mental health maladies or challenges are all addressable. They can be addressed, right? And
Right.
suicide can be prevented. And there's a, you know, overwhelming amount of stress on someone who is having suicidal thoughts, and they really think that that is the only way out. And
Mhm.
if we could as a society be a little more open to listening and hearing
Mhm. Mhm.
and helping, and I know we all do our best. I mean, I know I did, but I some of the thing I made some mistakes. I wish I could go back and redo some things, like not give him every bit of my money, but somehow get him into therapy. And I mean, I tried all
Yeah.
these
Oh,
things, but
sure you
looking,
did.
hindsight's
Mhm.
always 2020. But I think that the important thing moving forward is to really help bring more awareness to it so that we can talk about it. And people who are addicted, there's so much shame attached to addiction.
Mhm.
There's blame and shame, and it's many times described as a moral failing, and it's absolutely not.
Mhm.
And the brain is simply not working. The prefrontal cortex is not working. And I mean, I
No,
know
it's
in
not.
some of my most
It's not.
depressed times, like the last 5 years since I found out about his condition, I wasn't operating very well either.
No.
Because
No.
I was trying to help him, and as a parent, when your child is suffering from a mental health challenge or suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, addiction, you would stand in front of the bus for them. You're pretty much going to die trying, right? To
Yeah.
help your
Yeah.
child. And
Yeah.
then you're not functioning on
No.
your best level either. And I mean, my friends and family saw it, and they know. I mean, all I did was pull inside I because of the stigma attached. And
Yeah.
I put all my energy into research and how can I help him, and I wasn't helping myself at that time.
Well, I think with discussions about addiction and discussions about suicidal thoughts too, um, a lot of times I think when kids disclose that, they're just scared to disclose it to people.
Mhm.
I think adults probably too, scared to disclose it because they're afraid everyone's just gonna, you can't do
Right.
that, you can't do that, you can't do that, and not, well, let's talk about how you're feeling. Let's talk about
Mhm.
what you got you to this place. Let's talk
Right.
about some things that can help you
Mhm.
to, let's talk about things to look forward to in your life. Let's talk about what you can do when the dark thoughts come and all of that. I mean, really getting a suicide safety plan in place and
Right.
being not afraid to have a discussion about the suicidal thoughts, because I think the knee-jerk response is to just kind of end up saying, well, that's just wrong and awful and you can't think that,
And people say it's
instead
selfish,
of
right?
instead of having a conversation, a real conversation about what's going on
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
mind to
Yeah,
bring you there, you
exactly.
know? Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, you have gotten some lovely little comments. I don't know if you can see them, that people
I
have
cannot.
written some love for
I don't
you.
see
You
I don't
can't
see
see them?
anything.
Oh,
No,
shoot.
I'm not seeing
People have
anything.
written some lovely comments
Oh,
to
thank
you.
you.
Okay. Um, and ooh, now we're getting kind of, wow, this is okay. We have to do some blocking. Okay. Um, So anyway, thanks so much. We didn't have people ask questions, but I still think we had a good discussion. And I know that people will watch this in the next days to kind of get some more information. So I think that's good. I also want to make an announcement that my next live stream, I forgot to say it on the last podcast, but I'm doing one with Gwen this coming Tuesday night at 8 p.m., which is, of course, 5 p.m. on the West Coast.
And
We're doing
tell them who Gwen is in case they don't
Oh,
know.
yes. So Gwen Capshaw from Your Grief Guide, she does an episode with me about every 6 weeks or so. So the topic this week is on faith and where is God in my grief. And we've not had a whole episode on that before, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I had a big kind of event last night that I went to a concert, and I'm going to talk more about that because there's just a lot. There was just a lot, and I think it will be a great discussion, and I love to hear Gwen talk always. So, anyway,
she's got some great tips, and
she does have some
yeah.
great tips.
And the thing that I didn't mention is that I'm one of the hottest topics of the people that reached out to me, especially moms who lost a child, was the yoga that's what I'm working on right now, is my my grief yoga program. And I'm just,
Oh, yes.
I hope to have it done next week, but it's coming along a little bit more slowly. It's hard for me to get up and um, speak and be in a sort of a motivating or even teaching role right now. My brain isn't working very well, so I want it to be as good as it can be. So hopefully next week. But I know a lot of people were really, really looking forward to that and wanted me to reach out to them when I get it finished. So that'll be coming soon. Coming soon.
I just want to put this statement up that Janie wrote, and you should be able to see it on the screen now. Can you see it on the screen?
Who wrote that?
Just listening to the statement when
Oh,
people take their own lives. Janie, yes.
great.
That they
She's
want the
great.
pain to go away. Not, that it's
Mhm.
not. And she's absolutely right. You want the
Yes.
pain to
Thank
go
you,
away. That's what
Janie.
you really
Janie's
want.
one of my great friends, and she's
Oh, you got this
certainly.
one too from Kristen.
Oh, Kristen,
And you
hi,
got
thank
this one
you.
from
Steve Beck,
Steve.
and
Yes.
and Steve and
So
Marge, two of my
anyway,
great
you
friends.
got some beautiful comments that I
Thank you
can
so
show
much.
you.
Yeah.
And then
Thanks.
maybe even some more down here. Oh, yeah.
It's
Okay. Jamie, here's a question. Jamie, do you
Okay.
have any tips for others who are just facing the addiction of their child to get them started early? And then the second one is any suggested resources?
Oh my gosh, do not be mad at the child, be mad at the drug. That
Mhm.
is from a book I read called Don't Let Your Kids Kill You. And like I mentioned in my other podcasts, I didn't, or on your podcast, that I don't agree with everything in the book, but it was really, really instrumental in helping me to stop um, stop the madness of it, letting it take over my life as a parent. How can it not when your child is suffering? But um, to do the yoga, to get out and do the exercise, to eat right, to get the sleep, but for the child specifically, to keep the blame and shame out of the conversation, to listen, really active listening. What are they saying? They're trying to tell us. I think they're probably always telling us something, but are we listening? Are we distracted? Really
Mhm.
not putting any blame on the child. And I think, Steve, the other thing is education right now. I think we need to get into these schools really early, and start warning, because especially with fentanyl and what's going on right now with fentanyl, which is being
Mhm.
found in everything now, even marijuana, um, it can kill you on just in one dose, and you
Mhm.
don't know how much is
It's so
in it.
scary. It's so
It really
scary.
is. And I mean, since we started talking almost a half an hour ago, a handful of people have died of overdose, and 800,000 per year worldwide and climbing, and
Well, I remember the most scared I was of that is I had an 8th grade girl come in whose mom had found out she had used heroin 1 or 2 times. She regularly used marijuana, but she's an 8th grader. This is several years ago now. And mom wanted me to talk to her to try to kind of get through to her, which I don't know. I didn't even really know her, so that was difficult. But the thing that scared me that she said was, if there was fentanyl in the room right now, I would take it.
whoa,
Because it
whoa.
was that addictive to her, and she thought that the high was that big, and that scared me. That terrified me. Um, so it's just tough.
Yeah,
It is
that's
tough,
that's
and you need to
I
get help.
I've heard on from a couple of different experts that one was a DEA agent on one of the podcasts that I listened to, and he said, and then I heard it from someone else that if you're a drug dealer and your clients die from fentanyl poisoning, your credibility goes up with your clients because that means you have the good stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Oh my word.
It's a crazy world, and our kids already have so much to stress about, really out there. And I know even this war has my
Mhm.
grandkids really stressing, and that's on top of everything else. So,
Yeah.
Steve, I hope I answered your question, but I think awareness, education, and like keep the conversation, uh, talking about
Right,
it,
right. I
and
think I think that's a big thing too. Don't let them feel like it's taboo.
yeah, it's
You need
personal
them to be
stories.
able to feel like they can come to you
Hmm.
even when you really inwardly don't wanna talk about it. When you keep the communication open, I think it
Hmm.
helps for sure.
Yes, and the success stories that I've heard about anyway, even though they're few and far between, which is a little discouraging, but the success stories that I've heard, the common denominator with those is that somebody believed in them and somebody really, really took them under their
Yep.
wing,
Mhm.
and that's, oh, I just have
Yeah.
so many regrets with Judson that
Yeah. Well, Steve wrote to thank you. So I think you've answered his question well. And I don't want to keep you any longer today, Jamie, but thank you
thank
for
you.
coming on and
Yeah, thank
sharing
you.
with us. It's just so incredibly helpful. And again, for the rest of you, if you want to tune in on Tuesday night, then Gwen and Capsha and I will be talking about faith and where's God in my grief.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.